Hello and namaste. Today is our 6th video in the Holistic Leaders Yoga School series. So for today's video, we're going to be covering the second portion of the 8 limbs of yoga, which are the Niyamas. And the Niyamas are often known as our observances. And this is where the practice goes out from the yamas and our many of our external life, behaviors more internally. And the first one, and probably what's one of the most important ones, is known as Saucha. And so Saucha stands for, in short, purification. And purification of what? Well, in this practice, it's often known as purification of the body and purification of the mind. But I like to expand our understanding of purification. I think when we're thinking of purification, we want to find how all of our actions can live from a pure place. How can our actions be reflective of their effect on the environment? Our decisions around reduce, reuse, recycle. How can we find the way to live in that with that mindset of the effect we're having on the earth? When you get even a little bit more closer, how can we think of our social structures? How can there be structures that have a sense of purity in terms of equality towards all people of all backgrounds, of all groups? Getting even closer into our own relationships, we have to think about our work relationships, and is our role that we're doing with work serving us, or is it toxic? Do we need to let it go? With our friends and our partners, are these relationships that are nourishing us, that are helping us to live a life that's aligned with our values, or is it taking us apart? And if it's ever taking us away, we have to know when to make the decision to eliminate, to purify, to cleanse, which could mean changing a job, changing a relationship. When we look at purity, even another layer closer, we want to think about our own home, the place that we're living. They say cleanliness is close to godliness. So we want to find how our home can be pure, how we can the air that we're breathing in, if we're, are cleansing, how to not use, really strong chemicals with what we're actually cleaning the physical space with. We also want to think in our home, how can we have a pure space to do our practice? How can we create a sacred space that allows for us to, to do our daily practices, yoga, meditation, journaling, the contemplative practices we've covered. We also want to look at, getting even a little bit closer. What practices can we do to cleanse our own body, our temple, and, everything down to, showering daily, brushing our teeth, to the food that we consume, making sure that we're eating more fresh food, less processed, less chemicals, how we can, have the right exercise, practicing our yoga daily or whatever physical exercise that is safe for us to make sure we can maintain that activity to purify the body, as well as rest and sleep. It's very important that we have those times for our body to recuperate. So then purification gets even more subtle when we start to think about the mind and our emotions. So we want to find how we can engage in practices that, help to develop our mind to be focused. Things like our meditation, positive thinking, how we can cut out toxic influences, media influences, maybe shows we're watching, or things that can cause disturbances to our minds. And they say that when you engage in this first of the niyamas, the first of the 5 niyamas, Saucha, that you'll naturally develop a sense of cheerfulness. You'll naturally develop a pureness of your heart. And this is a sign that you are starting to purify when you start to see that cheerfulness coming into your life. And it lends into our next step naturally, which is the second niyama, known as Santosha or Santosha. And with Santosha, it stands for contentment. And this is very key to our yoga philosophy, knowing that regardless of our life circumstances, regardless of the situations that are going on outside of us, to know that our attitude and the way that we choose to see it will be the way in which we interact with it. So with Santosha, rather than letting the external things have control over us, we know internally that our mindset and our attitude shapes the way we will see it, the way we will navigate. And oftentimes when people think contentment, they think it's a passivity or not living actively in your life. And actually in yoga, a lot of times people think it's about relaxing, and it's not. It's about knowing the difference between the things that you can change and the things that you can't, having that ability to discriminate, and for the things that we can't change, to have contentment with those larger issues, and find in our own life how we can take active steps to making a change. So this leads into our third of the niyamas, which is known as tapas. And tapas, as it's translated, tapas is not just your dinner plate appetizers. Tapas here stands for to burn or to heat up. And if you think about the image of like a fire, fire is very transformational. It's transforming dense material objects into light. And so within our own body and our own experience, we want to find how we can add that, the heat of understanding our discipline practices. So it could also be defined as discipline. When we have a disciplined practice that can bring up the impurities and purify, like what we do in Saucha. And you have to find how daily you can schedule the time to do your yoga practice, to do your meditation practice. And that's not always easy. This lesson of tapas can also stand for how through the difficult experiences, through the suffering we've had in our life, much like the fire, that those things can create a sense of light actually in our life. They can bring to light and awaken us in a way that when we're just passively moving through our life, when things aren't difficult, we can get complacent. So tapas is really a big topic, but in general, it's finding how to get the discipline for your practices and embracing the challenge that comes with those, as well as other challenges we have. And to do that, it leads naturally into the fourth niyama, which is known as Svadhyaya. And Svadhyaya can be known as either self-study or study of spiritual scriptures. And, in order to grow, we've got to be aware of ourselves. We've got to be aware of what our highest ideal of who we want to be is as well. And if we don't engage in self-study, if we don't become aware, awareness is that first step towards growth, we're not going to have the ability to discriminate, where we are, where we want to go. So it has this piece of not just self-study, but a study of spiritual scriptures, because we want to have an ideal we want to move to. And it's not, you don't have to live any one particular spiritual path. And if you don't identify with a spirituality, maybe it is some tenets. It could even, even if you identify more as, atheistic, maybe there's particular tenets of how you like to live your life, and you want to study that so you can know if you're moving towards that or not. And again, develop that awareness and that discriminative ability to know where you are. So this moves into the last and the fifth and probably the most advanced of the niyamas, which is known as Ishwara Pranidhana. And Ishwara Pranidhana traditionally is known as surrender to God. To shorten it, you could just understand it as surrender or faith. And in life it gets very easy to try and control, to try and do things for our own self, to gain more power, whatever it may be, our desires, to get more money. And what this lesson is talking about is, how can we be a service to something greater? How can our work or our karma yoga, how can that be devoted in a way where we do our best, but we trust whatever the results are, that we're doing those in service to something greater, a cause, a purpose, a particular image of God. And how can we trust that whatever happens, how can we just have that faith in the universe, faith in what transpires? So this last one, Ishwara Pranidhana, the one before it, Svadhyaya, and the previous one, Tapas. So this discipline, self-study, and devotion, or devotion of our work, to our fruits of our work to God. These three are come together to be known what's known as Kriya Yoga. And Kriya Yoga, when you're reading the Yoga Sutras, is the very first sutra in the second chapter. And the second chapter is all around practice. So when you're wanting to develop this practice of yoga, the prerequisite to it is these last three steps. So it's very important, if you're wanting to go into this deeper path of yoga, the science of mastering our mind, as the Yoga Sutras come to say it, it's very important that you are knowing the ideals, you're studying those, studying yourself, that you're developing a disciplined practice, and while you're doing that, that you let go of the need for it to be about yourself, let go of the results, and have faith that wherever you're at, you're doing your best. So with this video, and at the end of our philosophy section of our yoga teacher training, my encouragement is to look back on the previous videos, look at all the different categories, the holistic categories of self, the different contemplative practices, and start to find your own Kriya Yoga practice. Start to engage in self-study around, your exercise, your sleep, your rest, your diets, your meditation, your mind, and what thoughts you're choosing to allow yourself to think. Start to think about all these things, and just every day evaluate, how can I move more towards my ideal? Where am I at? And just to trust where you are at too. To know that if you're making an earnest effort every day and doing your best, that's all you can do. So taking it home, maybe that can be in some encouragement to review the last series of videos, to really get this foundation strong, so that then when you move to the next, we did yamas, niyamas, so when we move to the next section of asana, and eventually to, pranayama and all the deeper meditative states, that you have this foundation. It's just very important to lay this. So I hope this has been of value to you. I hope that you're living a wonderful rest of your day, and thank you. Namaste.